All right, let's jump right in. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once threw down a pretty massive claim. He asked, "Don't you know life is like a military campaign?" And he absolutely wasn't mincing words here. He's making this dramatic point that life isn't just some peaceful, breezy garden for us to passively wander through. No, it is a relentless, ongoing military campaign. It demands an elite tactical mindset. Because every single day, you have been stationed at a key post.
Which brings us to a really foundational ancient Stoic thesis, vivere est militare, to live is to fight. And this gets right to the absolute core of Stoic philosophy. This is not some call to aggressive, outward violence. Not at all. It is a call to rigorous internal discipline. The only way you can successfully navigate the sheer chaos of the external world is by mastering the internal one first. So I want you to think of this explainer as your tactical briefing for the most important campaign you will ever fight, the battle within.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the ultimate field doctrine for commanding your own mind. We're going to synthesize these timeless strategies from ancient philosophers, modern coaches, and elite commanders to build a practical, tactical manual for your daily life. Here's our briefing overview for today. We'll be covering 1. The battlefield within. 2. The inventory of virtues. 3. The rules of engagement. 4. The reluctant commander. And 5. The ultimate field doctrine. Let's get moving.
Section 1. The battlefield within. Preparing for the campaign. Listen to this brilliantly haunting quote from author Kate Bowler. "I keep having the same unkind thought. I am preparing for death and everyone else is on Instagram." It just starkly contrasts our modern obsession with digital distraction against this ultimate existential urgency. The stakes of our interior campaign are not trivial, you guys. Time is literally the currency of this war, and it's paid out with every single excuse, every avoidance, and every capitulation to comfort. We are constantly trading our finite time for noise.
And honestly, that pairs perfectly with Dwight D. Eisenhower's sharp military pragmatism. Hope is not a strategy. Hoping for an easy life? Hoping your critics will be kind? Or hoping that you'll magically just wake up disciplined tomorrow? That is absolutely useless. Without actionable internal discipline, you are essentially walking onto the battlefield completely unarmed.
Section 2. The inventory of virtues. Weapons of the mind.
When we look at author Ryan Holiday's functional taxonomy of Stoic battle virtues, there's a fascinating pattern that emerges. Every losing vice is really just the shadow twin of a winning virtue. Think about it. Rashness is just courage completely devoid of clear-headedness. Overconfidence is what happens when discipline collapses into self-flattery. And selfishness? Well, that's the complete negation of the sacrifice required to keep any unit, whether it's a military squad, a startup team, or even your family, coherent and strong.
You can actually map these ancient virtues directly onto a classic sports coaching motto. Play hard translates perfectly to fortitude and courage. Play smart is your clear-headedness and discipline. And play together? That's selflessness and sacrifice. It just goes to show how a truly great modern coach is fundamentally a commander of interior campaigns, making these ancient, invisible virtues visible out there on the court or the field.
Section 3. The rules of engagement. Integrity under fire.
So the crucial question here is, how do you react when you take enemy fire? Let's look at what we're calling the Malcolm maneuver. The author Janet Malcolm once got this ruthless, nasty manuscript review from the famous writer Philip Roth. But instead of crumbling or firing back, she executed a highly effective Stoic defense. She received the feedback, she extracted whatever tiny useful signal was buried in there, and then she discarded the toxic noise by literally writing, "What's bugging you, Philip?" Then she kept moving forward. She perfectly embodied Marcus Aurelius' rule, "We have the freedom to take correction, but absolutely not the obligation to take the insult."
But hey, defense is only half the battle, right? How we advance matters just as much. The ancient philosopher Chrysippus expands our rules of engagement brilliantly here. He points out that runners in a race should compete as hard as they possibly can, but they should never trip their competitors. Why? Because tripping an opponent doesn't actually mean you win the race. You merely want a completely different, lesser contest, the contest of who is most willing to cheat. Every single shortcut that violates the rules inherently corrupts the result, which forces us to evaluate our own daily campaigns and ask a really heavy question. How do we fight without becoming what we fight against? Because when you call a penalty on yourself, or you refuse to take that easy, cheap shot, you are protecting something that a scoreboard can never, ever record: the integrity of the self. True victory requires that your integrity remains totally intact.
Section 4. The reluctant commander, leading from service.
Usually the hunger for power is driven by pure appetite. It aggressively seeks the spotlight and views leadership as this glittering prize to be won. But the Stoic view? It's driven entirely by duty. They are happy to serve and view leadership merely as a mandatory post. Look at Marcus Aurelius. He was so repulsed by the idea of power that his teacher, Fronto, literally had to remind him that his destiny required him to wear the emperor's purple cloak. He didn't want the spotlight. And that reluctance is exactly what made him one of history's most respected leaders.
Author Robert Greene amplifies this perfectly through the historical example of Hannibal. Hannibal's morale doctrine shows us that a commander who leads from the front, who doesn't need the spotlight but always shows up for the grueling, muddy work, generates this incredibly contagious morale. Hannibal's men were less well-armed and vastly outnumbered by the Romans. Yet, he consistently conquered. Why? Because his reluctant, service-driven leadership earned the absolute confidence of his people. Morale is contagious, and the leader always sets the tone.
And finally, Section 5, the ultimate field doctrine, timeless tactics. A commander who cannot truly see the battlefield is strategically blind. William Osler, who's a foundational figure in modern medicine, applied a warrior's training regimen directly to perception itself. He said, learn to see, learn to hear, learn to feel. Know that by practice alone can you become expert. Virtues aren't just magically handed to us at birth. They're built, repetition by repetition, season by season. You have to train your perception just as rigorously as a soldier trains with their gear.
So how do we practice that perception in our daily interactions? Thich Nhat Hanh's vow is an amazing example. I am determined to practice deep listening. I am determined to practice loving speech. In a world dominated by absolute deafening noise, choosing to deeply listen and speak kindly is not a weakness. Guided by the philosopher Kant's idea of inherent human kindness, this reveals itself as a profound, courageous form of a warrior's restraint. Because a warrior who is only fierce just ends up burning everything down, including themselves. Calibration is key. Let's look at the timeless axis and see how this builds our endurance. Legendary music producer Rick Rubin noticed that the newest sounds date instantly. They expire in like 1 minute because they're desperately chasing the present. But organic instruments, they hold steady over decades. And as Tolstoy noted regarding the human intellect, permanent truths, like the writings of Epictetus, remain relevant for 2,000 years because they hunt for something far deeper. A surviving soldier has to anchor themselves in these permanent, timeless truths, not the fleeting, momentary noise of the present.
All right, let's distill all of this into your ultimate field doctrine checklist. First, identify your correct virtues and vices. Treat every setback and piece of unfair criticism as reps in the gym. Win the right way, no shortcuts, no tripping the competition. Anchor yourself in the timeless rather than chasing fleeting trends. Lead from a genuine place of service and duty. And finally, deepen your attention and soften your speech. This is how you equip yourself to win your personal campaign.
Which brings us full circle to our anchoring motif, representing an entire philosophy of living. Calm body, quiet mind. Play hard, play smart, play together. It's not just a catchy sports tagline, it is a field order. It demands keeping the body stilled so the mind can actually think clearly, applying maximum effort and clear intelligence, all in the service of something much larger than yourself.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a step back and really look at your own life right now. The battlefield is everywhere. You are on it, whether you want to be or not. So I leave you with this one unyielding question. What kind of soldier will you be?